how do you see Modi's brand graph in the last 10 years?
So brand Modi has been growing, growing and growing.
Brand Rahul, how do you see his graph?
Brand Rahul has been unmitigated disaster at most times. So if brand Rahul wants to contend with brand Modi, then he has to work 24/7 into 365.
The strong punchlines that might translate into numbers?
Punchlines are making a difference in terms of how people perceive what the likely outcomes are going to be.
What is your reading of the situation today?
Abki par 400 par.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Statesman Talk with me, Deepthi J. Verma. Today we are being joined by Dilip Cherian, who's widely considered as India's first image guru. And he's an expert in policy making, brand building, political PR, as well as crisis management. Thank you for joining us, Dilip. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are considered as one of the first image gurus of India, and it says that PR, especially, is both art and science. For somebody who stayed relevant for almost 3 decades, how do you see the world of PR today and when you started?
That's a terrific question, and one that I haven't really
Thought about?
examined so closely. But I will opt for the science part.
Okay.
I think what keeps you relevant and what keeps you honest is the fact that you are relying on science. And what do I mean by science here? The science of measurement, the science of being able to calibrate messaging, and the science of listening.
So can human beings be quantified like that, like when you're building brands?
I think when you're dealing with large numbers of human beings, it is smarter to quantify than to think that you will get a qualitative sense of what's going on.
Okay.
If you don't watch the numbers, you're going to be far off the mark when it comes to what I would say qualitative stuff. Don't ignore the qualitative stuff, listen to it, but measure what can be measured on a regular basis.
Again, when we talk about 3 decades almost of being in PR, as well as you started off as a journalist first, we've seen a huge change, obviously, in these 3 decades, starting from 24/7 news and then the web, and now it's TikToks and Reels. How does the messaging keep changing for from Gen X to millennials to Gen Z now? Do you think that it becomes shorter, crisper?
Dumber. In one word.
Okay.
But yes, the positive side is that highly focused. It's very important to recognize that attention spans have got compressed over a period of time. What used to be a 20 or 40 minute kind of episode earlier now no longer has validity, except that there is also a burgeoning and emerging audience which is going back to long form. They take comfort in the fact that you have the ability to be
And this
immersed.
is all age groups?
All age groups.
They're going
It
back to
is
traditional media.
a few of them.
Few of them.
I think that when you're going for quality and when you're going for people who I believe are opinion setters in any society, they are going back to both formats. The vast number, see what has happened in a big way is that while 30 years ago, access to media itself was a privilege. Today,
That's where PR came in.
that is why PR had a role. Today, access to media is in your hand every minute of the day. In fact, it is in your hand in such a violent fashion that you have no time for attention. You no longer pay attention. Therefore, you are living in an attention fractured, fragmented, and extremely, I would say, where as a PR person, the advantage is you can get away with not being nuanced or wonderfully correct. You can get away with little snippets, which is all that is making an impact. So I would say that I am blessed that I belong to a generation which has seen access to media being controlled entirely by the state in one case, and access to the media not being controlled in any way, which is what is happening today.
This is from the consumer point of view, right?
I'm privileged that I belong to a generation which has seen media which was so controlled that only government owned and ran it, to a situation today where media continues to have some government ownership, but largely today 98% of what you consume is non-government media.
You mean the influencers?
The influencers, even the media houses,
Yeah.
even the number of media vehicles. Meaning, you have the power in your hands to set up a media outlet in the space of 3 hours. If you
From
have-
your home.
From your home,
Yeah.
from your phone. So the point is that today, that access which was denied to everybody, now what we now call the media wall has come down so low that everybody is a broadcaster. You're entitled to be. Okay, you can technically be, and that is what has changed over the period of time.
As your role as a political analyst, and obviously today we are kicking off, the Lok Sabha elections in the world's largest democracy. What is your reading of the situation today? Like, do you think it'll be a clean sweep? Do you think it'll be some surprises? How do you see the indie bloc? Where is your money at?
Ab ki par 400 par.
Okay, that was my next question. Actually,
Having said that, let me say that elections as a form of setting the agenda now makes somewhat less sense than it used to make 15 years ago.
What do you
What
mean?
do I mean by that? I think that today, given the nature of commercial politics, as I call it, dominated by big money, dominated by the lack of ethics and scruples, you are in a situation where, irrespective of what the results are, you might end up with the same government. So, the numbers only matter in a statistical kind of sense. It is a snapshot of a current situation. Is that what is going to be ruling you for the next 5 years? The answer is maybe not. So, to some extent, the excitement which used to be the dominant feature of elections, and you will find the word of election fatigue being thrown around in media a lot. The reason is that people believe that irrespective of which way they vote, the end result will probably be the same.
So you mean, when the opposition says that their accounts were frozen, let's say, and they were bootstrapped, you think you cannot fight on a shoestring budget? You think money plays a very important role?
In this answer of mine, my answer was not pointed at money or the opposition.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that irrespective of which parties win, finally the formation of coalitions and governments is based on the ability to strong arm people into the coalition of your
And
choice.
trade, yeah.
And so that's the difference.
And coming back to Ab Ki Baar 400 Bar, as a marketing person, you think this is a punchline that really will work, and even Modi ki guarantee, these are strong punchlines that might translate into numbers?
I think punchlines matter. I think in a situation where punchlines are the mode of communications for a generation which is brought up on the TikToks and the Reels, I think that these punchlines are making a difference in terms of how people perceive what the likely outcomes are going to be. When I talked about election fatigue, I'm pointing at two things. One, a ennui with the government saying, it doesn't make a difference what we do, this is the government we're going to get. The second level of boredom is people saying that protesting or voting in the other direction is not going to matter too much, because either there's not enough numbers in that in that game. And in a democracy which has the philosophy of first past the post as opposed to proportional representation, I think we are dealing with a situation where the majority will probably be in the direction of what we expect.
And why do you think that is? Is it the overall environment, with people changing their parties ever so often, or do you think the brand Modi is too strong that or the opposition is not getting its act together?
That's a good question. And I think the answer is brand Modi is too strong.
Too strong.
The answer also is that there is no narrative on the other side. If there was a narrative on the other side, you could measure one brand versus the other. This is a bit like, I would say, Hindustan Lever or like Citibank as far as products are concerned. When you have just one brand which has a colossal reach, which has credibility, and which also has mass appeal, then it's very difficult for a contender to come up.
And why
But
do you think
it's not
he has
impossible.
that? Yeah.
But it's not impossible. You've seen the speed with which a Raj Narayan came and dissed Indira Gandhi. You've seen the speed at which Jayaprakash came and dismissed a government. You've seen the speed at which Arvind Kejriwal came, God bless him, while he's in jail at the moment, and managed to completely
Was it
destroy.
because of them or different factors playing in their favor?
I think individuals matter a lot.
Matter a lot.
And today, in today's politics, individuals matter, I think, a lot more than previously. Why do I say that? Because today's generation of voters are starstruck by individuals. They are creatures who...
Cult politics.
Cult politics is a brilliant way of putting it. I put it as celebrity politics.
Celebrity politics. Yeah. How do you see Modi's brand graph in the last 10 years?
I think...
Despite all the criticism that comes his way.
You're speaking to someone who ran the first Vibrant Gujarat campaign.
Okay.
You're also speaking to someone who was responsible for the launch of the other marquee Modi product, which is Gift City in Gujarat. Okay, I've done that. Let me tell you, brand Modi has been growing and growing. In the second term of his chief ministership, the first term of his prime ministership, it was on the ascendant. In the second term of his prime ministership, it went rocketing further higher. But everybody knows there is the law of the jungle and the law of gravity. Both work towards the same direction. Your growth has to reach a certain plateau.
Yeah.
And the question that this election will show is whether that plateau has been reached
has he peaked or not.
Or is the plateau close by.
And Brand Rahul, how do you see his graph in the last few years? Do you think he's catching up? Do you think he's a serious challenger?
I think Brand Rahul has been an unmitigated disaster at most times for a very simple...
If he came to you for like a brand revamp, what are you going to tell him?
I would first say that make up your mind whether you want to play this game 24/7.
Okay.
There is this current theme of thought among parents, young adults, etc., a concept which is completely alien to me called burnout. I think burnout requires one tight slap to the face and two slight taps across other parts of the body, and you'll be finished with your burnout. If you want to be in politics, if you want to be in banking, if you want to be in academics, you have to learn to understand that you are now playing a 24/7 game, because there's always somebody smarter, sharper, and better at communicating than you. So if Brand Rahul wants to contend with Brand Modi, then he has to work 24/7 into 365. And unless that happens, it won't work. Second, you have to be able to have a second in command, a third in command, who are at least as sharp as you are, if not sharper. And that is the other advantage that we often don't discuss in the case of Modi. Modi is made by the fact that there is the presence of an Amit Shah. I don't think there is a better caste calculator or party organizer than he is. So having a powerful number two who is willing to stay at number two and deliver what makes you number one is one of the qualities that Modi has.
Which is missing in Rahul's case.
Yeah, meaning, would you really consider
Yeah.
KC Venugopal as a number two? Meaning, I'd be really worried if you did.
Okay, one of the opposition's complaints is that the government has been using its agencies, and that's an unfair advantage. As somebody who's seen the political landscape for so many years, you think it was always the case? You think you've been part of closed room discussions? You think all strong governments have done so, or this government has done it a bit too much, and their claim is fair?
I have a dubious advantage that I am, as you said, in the inside room of a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
I've been part of the business landscape for about 10 years as a business journalist, 30 years in this game. And I've been on the inside track where everything is not public. I haven't seen this level of intervention ever before.
Okay.
So this is a level which is unprecedented. And unfortunately, much like everything else, there will be a point in time when this too will cease to matter. When you will cease to be bothered by this and expect to have, like some families already have, one person of the family
Is abroad.
designated to go to prison.
Or is abroad.
Or is abroad.
Yeah.
And is that a good place for the country to be? I think it will diminish us as a democracy. It will diminish us also as a self-policing system. Meaning it's like, if you don't allow that fear to happen only in a few and limited cases, then once the fear becomes widespread, the fear begins to diminish.
Okay, and when obviously Modi's fans say that he's a strong leader, and you've also said in your interviews that there was a need for a strong leader. Like there was almost like a lot of people wanted a strong leader for the last couple of decades, whereas now some say that he's bordering on being autocratic. How do you view that, and do you think he's that person? He's the same person, or do you see a change?
My view is that based on my fundamental belief that you got to measure everything, if you just measure everything, India functions best when there is no leadership of any kind. When there is
chaos.
When there is a semi-messy situation, it works much better.
So
People love it.
coalition?
Yeah. Coalitions work better for India. Simply because we are a bit of a coalition polity.
Yeah.
Polity. The Kashmiri has probably about 2% to do with what a Keralite believes in. And this is just the way it is. So the way the Manipuri thinks is diametrically different from what the Maharashtrian is thinking at the west of the country.
Do you think this government has come the closest to having that ground connect?
I think
it's
not.
impossible?
In fact, I think that they are pushing for a much greater
Homogeneous,
level
yeah.
of homogeneity,
Yeah.
which I think is dangerous for this country. Because that's not who we are. We are essentially just a momentary coalition of unfriendly tribes put together under one flag. And we need to recognize that.
And do you think that's one of the reasons why the South is difficult for this party to break into?
I don't think it's just the South.
Okay.
There is this myth being created that, the North is all united. Mm-hmm. That's not true at all.
Okay.
And in fact, the East is not united. The Northeast is even less united. And what the parts that China has not claimed are definitely thinking differently from what Western UP is thinking. So I think that it is not the same. They may be voting the same party, but that doesn't mean it's the same. Okay. This is the distinction I try and watch for. How people behave and how people see their reality. And the reality is not as uniform as is made out.
Then how do they get the numbers then?
The numbers come because you are willing to pull into your drawing room or your battlefield all the people who you think will win.
Okay.
either by coercion,
Yeah.
by compulsion, or by cash.
Okay. Do you think we'll see a revival of Congress in the near future?
I don't think we should look for a revival in terms of one party or the other. I think when change comes, it comes from a direction we don't expect.
Okay.
That is both the beauty and the excitement of India. I mean, I have seen, if you look at all the times that governments have changed, it has not been the same people who have come and disrupted the government.
This is the unknown players.
Absolutely. And it is the beauty of the unexpected, the black swan moment, which I'm expecting at all times.
Okay, perfect. My last question to you is, as you've been a journalist before, for first-time voters who are not used to a traditional form of media, where should they depend for their, if they want to make an informed choice today, who should they look up to, and where should they get their information from?
That's a good question. I would recommend they look to marquee brands which have been around for 100 years. The Statesman is a good brand.
Okay.
Brands which have something going for them, which have a reason to stay correct, which have a reason to do the double checking, not fact checking, double checking.
Double checking.
And unless you have marquee brands, don't rely on that friendly neighborhood idiot who's broadcasting on WhatsApp and conning you because she doesn't know, he doesn't believe,
Yeah.
and she can get away with just looking good.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
You
you.
so much for this conversation.
Thank you.